Hey pal, my name's Kalen. I'm 32. I got no job, no wife, no kids, and no real sense of self. How to get it, how to end up this way. It's a long life of so many different things. I grew up in Hawaii, the island of Kauai. My family wasn't particularly wealthy. Everyone kind of just worked and got by. Lived in a house where it was like three different families in one house. My family, my auntie and her family, and then my grandparents. At one point, my cousins and my other aunt also moved in, so we had like four families in the house, and that was the kind of living that I grew up in. It's like everybody had to kind of stick together to get by. Financial times were always tough. It was always how can we save money here, or what do we not have to buy to make it through to the end of the month type of thing. And for a lot of families in Hawaii, it is that way. But it's not really about that. It's kind of like I had to live where I grew up, and I kind of everything was about scarcity. Everything was about scarcity, and even when it came to like my mom and my dad, my mom was working, I think two jobs, and my mom had me at a very young age. My mom was just about 18 when she had me, so young family. And she did her best to raise me and try to make time for me. And I was raised by like a bunch of different people, depending on who was babysitting that day or who was just watching over me. Sometimes it was my grandpa, sometimes it was my grandma, sometimes it was my uncles. Just I was kind of just watched by everybody and raised by everybody. It wasn't just my parents, and it was all these different people teaching me these different life lessons at different points in time in life. And not to say that it was bad or anything. I enjoyed my time growing up in Hawaii. I actually think growing up in Hawaii is one of my favorite things about myself. I love the people, I love the culture, I love the language. Um, I don't normally speak that, Hawaiian pidgin English unless I'm talking to my family. Even to the camera here, it would sound very different for a lot of people listening to me if I was speaking that way. But that's part of it. That's part of this struggle that I'm in. I mean, maybe it wouldn't help with the wife and kids and the job part, but there's a kind of lack of sense of self that I have where I don't know exactly who I really am in a weird way because like I spent so much of my life like running away from who I was because of my problems with my weight um and comparison to like what other people had. I was fat my whole life, so I got made fun of for being fat. I got bullied in school for being fat, and it really made me hate myself. It really made me feel like I was never going to be as good as other people. And it's like every turn, there was some new kid being like, oh, what's new, fatty? Or they like if I would go eat lunch, it was like, oh, give me your bread roll because you definitely don't need it, or some smart ass comment like that, right? And it got to me, dude. As a kid, it got to me. There was one point in time where when I tried to avoid going to school as much as I possibly could. I like had my dad's alarm in the morning was this old Nokia like brick phone, right? And I remember one morning I took his phone and I like took it all the way outside into the garage and I like hid it because me as a kid, like I was like, oh, when this alarm goes off, it means it's time to go to school and dad's gonna get up and take me to school. So I was like, if I hide the alarm, I won't have to go to school. And then that turned into a whole thing and I got in trouble, obviously. But it was so bad to the point where, and I don't know if this is true, right? I don't know if this is like a friend of the family or not, but there's a police officer that got involved at one point, and he comes over to the house and he's standing in front of me and he's talking to me and he's like, "Why don't you want to go to school? Like, what's wrong?" And me as a kid, I'm looking up at this police officer thinking I've hit the most biggest trouble in my life. I'm regretting every decision I made about not going to school, but I had to tell him and I had to tell my mom And my dad at the time, I was like, people are mean to me, you know. I don't want to go to school because all they do is make fun of me. They call me fat, they call me like stupid. They poke at you. You know, this was school in the early 2000s, so people were very handsy back then. They'd like poke at your stomach, or they'd do that stupid ass scoot, whatever that bullshit was. Sorry for my language, but I got so sick of that, you know. I got so sick of that time of my life because everything was centered around something that was wrong with me. I had some friends, you know, I still have friends. I have a pretty solid friend group that I've grown up with over my life, and they've always accepted me for who I was, and I'm grateful for that. But outside of the time I would spend with my friends or my family who I was close with, there's a lot of time where everybody else outside of that is just constantly pointing out my own flaws, you know, flaws that I already knew on the inside, but then it gets amplified because everybody around me is also talking about it. And maybe it was because they wanted to deflect from their own flaws, so they, you know, they have a sense of insecurity, so they pass on that insecurity to somebody else by being like, yeah, well, what's wrong with you? And it kind of set me on this path where I would doubt everything I would do, because it's kind of like, as a child, I got the habit formed, or the mindset formed, of like everything I was doing was wrong because it was constantly being pointed out at me my whole life, you know, and that carried way into my adult years. Insecurity issues, like a lot of inability to follow through with plans. I could never really finish everything because I was so self-critical, to the point that I would stop trying, if that makes any sense. Like, I would think so hard that everything I was doing was wrong and that it had to be perfect so that nobody could point out the flaws, that at some point I started giving up on things, you know? I'd start these little projects or something, just for fun, but that critical side of me is still there, and fun turned into criticizing myself, which turned into things being unfinished, and it also jaded my view of other people. It made me think that no matter what it was, anybody who perceived me was automatically thinking about all the flaws that I have, you know, and that's just not even true. Like, people don't really care. People have their own lives to live. They look at you and they're like, oh, whatever, that's just another dude. But when you grow up in that sense of like constant judgment, and you become very mistrusting of people. So into my early 20s, or into more of like my later teens, early 20s, mid 20s, I like isolated myself a lot. I stopped talking to a lot of people. I preferred to be alone most of the time, and it's kind of how it is now, to be honest. I'd rather be alone most of the time. I like to say that I like being alone, but I don't like being lonely, if that makes sense. I like having the peace and quiet of my own life and my own time, but I don't want to completely lose the connection with the people that I care about. You know, I don't want to just be stone cold silent to the world. And now that I'm 32, you know, and I'm thinking back on my life, that growing up with that type of mentality has genuinely like crippled my ability to believe in myself. It's crippled my ability to look at myself and see success rather than failure, you know? And the worst part is, like, first it started with other people, and then eventually, as I got older and I became an adult, and I tried to make my own way in life as an adult, it became my parents. Not so much my mom. My mom was always, you know, supportive of me and tried to guide me the best she could, but my dad was very critical on me. And I have no hate to my dad, you know. We didn't have the best relationship starting. There's many things that happened in my family with my dad, and other problems. Unfortunately, my family is a victim of many cases of drug abuse, you know, but that affected me growing up as well, having to deal with that, and, you know, realize that's in my family's history. So my dad was very critical about the decisions I'd make growing up. And it's hard. It was already hard when it was other people, but then I started not feeling safe or like I could be myself at home and that really made me lost. Like, that really screwed up my sense of self, and I was always pretending to be somebody else. My entire life became this performative act of, like, what could I do or what could I say that would result in the least amount of criticism or the least amount of interaction with just people. I'd hide in my room, I'd close my door, and I'd just like put on my headphones, kind of like I have now, and I'd just listen to music, or I'd watch hours and hours of anime, or I'd play video games. It was always an escape. It was a constant fleeing from myself and everything around me, and the judgment and the inadequacy and the insecurity. And now I'm 32, sitting here in this apartment by myself. I had a lot of time to be alone, away from my family, away from my friends. I'm in a different state. I grew up in Hawaii, like I said, but I'm in Oregon now. So I went from a life of struggle, and then there was a point in time, I think it was my early 20s, where I moved away from home on my own for the first time. I moved to Michigan with this girl I was dating at the time. And I thought that's when my life really would have started, That's when I thought things would get better. I was on my own. I almost felt like I found my way out, And that turned out to be completely untrue, because that relationship messed me up even further. It messed me up even worse, because it was like it took everything that I thought I'd finally escaped and made me realize that I'd never escaped at all. It was just like impending doom, right? We had like the usual honeymoon phase, and everything was going great. I'd finally gotten a place of my own with this girl that I was interested in. But then even that became a prison of kind of like, I don't want to say prison, because even the girl that I was with, I don't hate her. At this point in time, I have no harsh feelings against her. It just didn't work out, and that's okay. Sometimes it doesn't work out. But for it to come to a point where I realized that I needed to leave, things had to go bad, things had to kind of go south. And after it ended, I ended up back home, back in Hawaii, back in the same situation, living with my parents, unhappy. I was like even more fat. Like my weight did not go down. It just kept going up, because I was stress eating and like doing everything I could to find comfort and escape the reality I was living in, because I just couldn't accept it. I just couldn't. It didn't feel real. Like, it felt like if I just stayed away from everybody long enough and did whatever was comfortable, that eventually things would pass. And in a way they did, but also in a way I didn't grow. I didn't grow anymore than when I had left home. If anything, I think it kind of regressed back into, a deeper level of insecurity and uncertainty in my life. So then I started up again. I got a job. I got an apartment with my friend and my cousin. And I worked, and I was finally feeling like I was going somewhere again. And then the job that I had, which was arguably, I think, one of the best jobs that I ever had. Sorry, my eye was like watering for some reason. My allergies are kind of acting up, but even that job fell through. Guess what? Owned by a corporation. This site is not making the sales we want, which I think was absolute BS. I think they just wanted to close it so they could sell it, but they cut us off, bro. And then I was out of a job yet again. And then after not working for so many months, I started tossing and turning in my own head and wondering where my life was going. And I think at the time I was like 27, 26, 27, something like that. And then I started being like, okay, I just gotta do something. So I started going out, I started going for walks, I started hitting the gym for a little bit. I was kind of in the unemployed homie arc, finding himself arc, whatever you want to call it. And for a while it was good, for a while I was like, okay, I have all this free time. Now I can really do the things that I want to change, like my weight. I started doing live streaming on Twitch. That's something I always wanted to do, but I didn't really get far. Like I said earlier, a lot of things in my life ended up going unfinished, right? Or I just dropped them because of insecurity and this need for perfection that I could never achieve. But I was losing weight. I had a pretty good circle of friends around me. I lost a lot of people because of that relationship ending, but at the same time, people who were there for me all along really pulled through for me. So I'm forever grateful for that. But at some point, I had to go back to work. I had to go back, and I started working again at this old job. They took me back. It was a job that I had gotten when I was like, I don't know, 17, 18 years old, and I used to work there, and then I moved away and then came back. But it's an old workplace, and I went back there, and that old workplace still had the same old problems. So, it is like you go from a situation where you want to change, and then you end up in a situation where things are the same as they were years ago, and it, like, in a weird way, it brings you back to that time in your life. You might be a different person, but when you experience something that's so familiar and you kind of know the ins and outs of that job and like the negatives that come with it, you end up in that same mental space. Or at least I did, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm right back to square one. I haven't changed. I haven't done anything differently. I could have just been here the whole time instead of going through all that BS that I just lived through. And then I was there for a while, and then my family was like, you know what, we're sick of living in Hawaii, so let's move. So here I am again, being like, oh, okay, we're moving. So I was home, moved away, came back, moved away again, came back, and now I'm moving away again. So many of my years of life were fragmented in these different places, and I never kind of like knew which one felt like home the most. I mean, it's Hawaii for sure, but it's like, dude, I moved away, started new things, got new friends, and then I was pulled back. It's like one step forward, two steps back type of deal. And now we're in the present day where I'm 32. Like I said, no job, no wife, no kids, no plan really, and I'm still alive, dude. I have this time where I have so much free time right now because I'm not working, that I've started to do things again. I'm starting to change myself again for like the third time. I started working out. If you ever watch any of my other videos, I'm doing weightlifting now. I'm doing walking, whether it be outside or the treadmill. Now I'm doing YouTube. And I hate bringing up YouTube so much, but it's like, that's really what I have going for me right now until I can get another job. It's me here learning how to speak to this camera, wanting it, wanting to learn, wanting to grow, and really pushing past these insecurities that have been holding me down my whole life. I don't want this to be another unfinished project. I don't want it to be another sign that I failed, But in a way, I think by avoiding failure, or trying to avoid failure, or trying to avoid negative situations my whole life, I have in turn taught myself that failure is just completely not okay, and that I should stop before I fail. But at 32, I'm realizing that all of those failures that I experienced and that I ran away from were, important life lessons for me. And every failure gets you closer to success. Every failure is a learning opportunity, and it's what you do with that opportunity that really decides, who you are, who you want to be. And I'm glad that I can now sit here and kind of really talk about this, really go deeper, go more, raw, because sorry if you guys can hear that stuff going on outside. They're working on the side of the apartment building today, but I'm glad that I can sit here and kind of talk about it and be more raw and be more, I guess, authentic with how I present my life and share my story. With everything that was going on with me, I realized that I've become very performative in the way that I kind of speak very vaguely most of the time, because I just have this general like mistrust of what I tell people and what I say and how much information I divulge. Like I had a reaction of like, if I tell you something, it's automatically going to be weaponized against me, whether that came from my dad or my ex-girlfriend or like some of the old friends that I used to have, because it's happened with everyone, bro. They will take something I did or said and they'll just use it against me to point out even more failures or insecurities that I already have. And that, living in that constant cycle, has turned me into a very safe, vague, untrusting person, if that makes sense. And I'm trying really hard to escape that mentality. I'm trying really hard to embrace myself and be more open and willing to learn and fail and try new things, breaking past my own self-criticism and fear of the outcome, fear of like anything really. Like I don't want to be scared anymore, dude. I don't want to be inadequate anymore. I don't want to leave behind a trail of unfinished thoughts and ideas and projects and passions. You only live once in this life. They say the only thing guaranteed are death and taxes, and death comes for us all, bro. And I'm not trying to really die with no accomplishments under my belt. And that comes with recognizing the fact that I have the power to control my own fate. Not necessarily that I'll just avoid dying, because tomorrow is promised to nobody, right? But today is the day where I can make a choice to be better, to be different from what I grew up in, to really embrace the fact that my life has so many imperfections, and that in itself is what makes me interesting. My life experience is what gives me a unique perspective on the world. Nobody experienced life the way that I do, and instead of running away from it and being like, oh, you're just a complete failure and you don't know how to do anything right, it's now more of like, you have this opportunity to really get right. I have this opportunity to really get right with myself and decide that everything I do from here going forward is only to better my life. It's only to build something that I couldn't have as a kid or provide to anyone else as an adult, but it has to start with me and my acceptance and my willingness to look past my own insecurity and the judgment of others and the opinions of friends and family. So yeah, I'm 32, I got no job, no kids, no wife, no plan, but I do have a growing sense of self. I do have a feeling that I can actually do something with my life, and that it doesn't have to depend on anybody else except me. And I'm glad that I can sit here and talk about it, because like I said, I'm not very trusting with people and the information that I give out and things like that, but I'm slowly breaking that mold and putting it out here to the world and letting the world perceive me is kind of like, I think, one of the best ways to do that. There's probably people out there who are in similar situations to me, and they feel like they don't have a voice and they don't have a right, so to speak, to want something better for themselves, and that's just not true. You can want better things, you can live a better way, you can make a choice every single day that pushes your life in a direction different from what other people say it should go. Break the norm, break the tradition, whatever it is. So yeah, no matter what stage in life that you're in, if you're like me, if you're not like me, different situation that you want to get out of, just know that you don't have to be so hard on yourself, and that's what I'm trying to learn. I don't have to be so hard on myself. I can do things, I can do new things, I can experiment, I can live life in a way that will reflect my true self and what I want and what I want to achieve. It's not about anybody else anymore. I mean, it is, because I'm doing this mostly for my siblings. I don't want them to grow up and suffer the way that I have, but it all starts with you, just like how it starts with me. And embracing yourself and being okay with the way your life went, because you know that it doesn't have to keep going that way. I think that's gonna be it for the video. I got a lot off my chest, and I hope somebody watching this can relate. I hope you find yourself, I hope you find your joy, your passion, and that you succeed in whatever it is you're trying to achieve, because I hope the same for me. And at this point in my life, that's okay. It's okay to want better. I'm gonna leave it at that. This video's gone for like half an hour, so thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, if you are in a similar situation, share with me. Let me know in the comments. What are you going through? I'd love to hear it. I'll no judgment, nothing at all. If you want to follow me along on my journey and try to turn my life around, I would really appreciate it if you'd hit subscribe. I'm trying to push to 50 subscribers so that I could at least go live. That way I can interact with my audience more. I would love to go live and, you know, do like a Q&A, maybe answer some questions, give advice where I can. So yeah, that's gonna be it. Again, thank you for watching. I hope you got something out of this. I hope it was helpful or relatable to you. And I'm gonna go walking now. I need to go for a long walk and kind of just let everything go, you know. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.